Welcome to Lawyers in the House with Motley. Wish you had a lawyer in the family? Now you do. Here's your host, Veronica Waters.
Welcome to Lawyers in the House. I am your host, Veronica Waters, here with another stellar show talking to you about all the law that can help you in your everyday life and answering your questions about how the law can make your life better. We are here with two fantastic lawyers I've started to get to know, and I'm going to introduce you to them right now because haven't we all wished at one time or another that we had a lawyer we could call any time of the day or night, maybe not at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, but you wish you had somebody in the family that you could ask a question about how the law might be able to help you. We are giving that to you right here each and every Sunday at 8 a.m. on WSB. So thanks for joining us. We're going to take your questions. We're going to have different guests, different ideas, but always integrate you and your concerns into the show. Make sure you find us on social at Motley Law. You can email us your questions at lawyersinthehouse@motley.com. And I'm going to introduce you to two of the nicest, kindest, most fabulous, and powerful attorneys in the Motley family. We are talking today to Sarah Root, who is a Michigan native, Michigan State grad.
That's right.
Right here in Atlanta, and is known as a tenacious fighter for her clients, a powerful litigator who recently landed a $4 million judgment for one of her clients. Kudos. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you, Veronica. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And Craig LaChance, who comes to Atlanta by way of Canada.
That's correct, but I'm more or less an Atlanta native. I moved here when I was 8, so I think I kind of adopted the state as my own.
You have. You're a UGA grad,
That's
a Georgia
right.
State grad.
That's right.
And I also know that you had sort of a winding path to come to personal injury law because you used to work for the insurance companies, Craig.
That's right.
And Craig decided that he wanted to instead leave the dark side and come over to the light and maybe help clients actually, in Craig's words, hold those companies accountable for not negotiating in good faith.
Yep.
And he wanted to make sure that he could do right by the people. So we're talking to Craig and Sarah. Thanks so much for being in the house with us today.
We're happy to be here.
Our episode today is focusing on what to and what not to do after an accident. We live in Metro Atlanta, so we know that accidents happen all of the time, usually when you're rushing to the theater or, trying to get to work on time. And who knows what's going on with the person in the lane next to you. We see accidents, we pass accidents, some of us are in accidents. And there is, I'm sure, a right and a wrong way to do things. What I'm hoping to get from you guys today is what to do and what never to do.
Absolutely. I think for our purposes, we have sort of a best practices on what you should do. And then we can talk about some of the real world things, like you mentioned, when we're in a hurry trying to get to work.
Yes.
And if the police are telling us it will take 2 hours for them to get out there and that's just not realistic, what can you do?
So paint a picture for me of what's the best case scenario, right? Paint a picture for me of what it looks like when I do everything right after an accident.
So you definitely want to call 911 and have the police come out so that they can document everything. But in the interim, everybody has a cell phone. And I think nowadays that's a pretty easy tool that you have available where you can immediately videotape what you see, the positions of the vehicles. Really, that's critical before the vehicles are moved because I know so often we're trying not to hold up traffic and we do need to move the vehicles. Sometimes 911 will even tell you that if it's safe to move the vehicles out of the roadway, you want to do that. However, after the cars have been moved, you can't prove, who came over which line. So if you can get some of that safely before you get out of the vehicle, before you move the vehicle, that can be really critical. Same with getting witnesses. We have so many clients who will tell us, somebody stopped and said, I saw the whole thing, do you need anything? And they're like, no, I'm fine. And then the person drives off. And if we could have only gotten that person's name and cell phone number, that could have made all the difference in proving how an accident really happened.
So I think the law does say that we're supposed to, if the cars are movable, they should be moved off the side of the road. But you make an extremely valuable point that if my car is off on the side, how can I prove that Joe Schmo is the one who hit me and I wasn't the one at fault? I mean, unless the damage to the cars is obvious, Craig.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, in a rear end situation, a rear end collision, it's maybe not as much of a concern as potentially a lane change case where there's a dispute as to who had possession of the lane prior to the accident, who came over on who, and also sometimes in left turn situations at intersections. Those can be challenging cases sometimes. It's not even so much that people aren't being truthful or honest about how the accident happened. It's just that sometimes people think they had a red light or think they had a green light and they actually didn't. And, you get a big dispute and there's a witness. And as Sarah pointed out, witnesses can be really key in these situations. So at minimum, if you could get a business card or take down the name and number, or ideally, if the witness is willing to wait till the police arrive and make sure that witness is added to the police report, because that can be another challenging aspect of witnesses when they are not listed on the police report. Sometimes the defendant's insurance company will maybe challenge the veracity of that witness. Is that witness truly a witness, or is that a friend or a family member that's trying to help your client out? So if the witness is listed on the police report by the police officer, it's a little more airtight than if it's just, hey, well, here's a name and number that I got from someone that said they saw the accident. So I would always encourage you to try to have the witness stick around if they can, if it's a reasonable time frame. And I know that can be difficult because people have places to go, things to do. But the witness being listed on the police report with a name, an address, and a phone number is the best case scenario.
Maybe I don't want to wait on all of that, though. Or maybe the guy who rear-ended me says, oh, I don't have time, or I don't have insurance. I don't know if they're going to admit that to me, but he's like, what if I just give you my information right here on the side of the road? We don't have to wait for the police. You just call me, let me know what you need for your bills, and I got you.
Sure.
Is that a good way to handle it?
I mean, that's definitely more common in a less severe accident. If the cars are drivable and everybody's wanting to just get on their way. And I keep coming back to the cell phone, but that's where I think even if you just take a quick video and ask the other driver to show you their driver's license, insurance cards, you can get that, take a picture of it. I think video is even more helpful. Ideally, if they will call their insurance company while you're there so you can hear them reporting the claim, acknowledging how it happened, that's going to go a long way because, I just had it happen this week where a client came to me. She had her small daughter in the car, and they were trying to get to school. It wasn't a terribly severe accident. There was pretty good damage to the back end of her car, but the police told her it was going to be an hour before they could get there. So she did get the other driver's insurance card, got their name, and then she left. But sure enough, the police did end up coming to the scene an hour later. By that time, she was not there. And the other driver changed the version of events and said that my client was attempting to back into a parking space, which was not accurate, but she also wasn't there at the scene. So there was really no way to prove otherwise if she had taken a video, because at first, she felt very secure in doing this because the other driver was very apologetic. I'm so sorry I didn't see you there. If that would have been captured on a video, that would have changed everything. But without it, there was really nothing I could do. We didn't have any other witnesses. There was no other surveillance footage available. And so we can't work miracles in every situation. You
think that you're being so kind and so understanding and whatever, and helping somebody else go about their merry way. And you don't want to wait on the side of the road for an hour. But then you end up the creek without a paddle.
I'm guilty of it myself. I was in a small accident with my family on an Easter Sunday coming home from church in a neighborhood, and a pizza man put his car in reverse. I guess he had missed his turn. So that would normally look like we had rear-ended him.
Right.
When it was the other way around. And my daughter was the baby. She was crying in the back seat. We weren't seriously hurt. We had plans. We wanted to move on. Fortunately, I did at least think about having him call his insurance carrier, and we were there during that whole duration. So it worked out in my favor. But truly, here I am. This is what I've done for years as a personal injury lawyer.
And then you're in that situation. You didn't follow your own advice. But did you got video of him on the phone?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, which helped. And then everything worked out okay. But, I was kind of kicking myself because so many times I know that exact scenario doesn't. But because I had the video, I think that made the difference if I had needed it.
Right. And you were able to verify that this person did call. You knew that they were, I'm assuming he was on speakerphone.
Yeah.
Right. So you know he wasn't
Exactly.
talking to a buddy
Yep.
and pretending. All right. So you were able to at least document exactly what happened or his version of events and him telling the truth. But a lot of folks might not remember to do that. I mean, that's tip number one.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we need to remember. When you were talking about surveillance footage and stuff, Craig, is that something that is common when you are handling cases like this?
It depends. I mean, a lot of people make the assumption that these cameras at the intersections are recording and we can just make an open records request and get a video of what happened, and that's often not the case. Private businesses can be a good resource. Gas stations especially oftentimes have video surveillance footage going. I've got actually an ongoing case that I just signed up a couple weeks ago where there was a dispute as to how the accident happened. It was a left turn situation at a light, and there was a dispute as to the color of the light, and the officer actually went to the Quick Trip, I believe, that was at the corner of the intersection, and actually real time while he was investigating the accident viewed Quick Trip's surveillance footage and was able to determine that the other driver was at fault for the accident. And without that video, my client, it probably would have turned into what they call a he said, she said report, where the officer doesn't make a determination as to liability because both stories are equally believable and there's no independent witness and there's nothing to corroborate who's telling the truth. But just to go back for a second regarding video, I can't stress how important it is, and this is something that I encourage my clients nowadays, obviously for a future event, because we can't rewind the clock.
Can't rewind time.
But I have a case ongoing where my clients were rear-ended at night by a suspected DUI driver. My client got out and filmed the other driver outside his vehicle. He was obviously intoxicated on the video that my client took, but then he fled the scene of the accident before the police arrived. So he was never cited for DUI, but we've got what I consider to be pretty solid video evidence that this man was certainly under the influence of something. He didn't look right. Now, I can't talk too much about it because the case is ongoing, but just an example of just that driver, my client, having just the wherewithal to pull out a cell phone camera and film the other driver might make a massive difference on their case valuation at the end.
This is Lawyers in the House with Montlake on WSB, talking to you about what to do and what not to do after getting into an accident. I think it's going to be important to maybe coming up next talk about what to say and what not to say when you're talking to police and talking to the insurers themselves. And I'm sure you guys have got some really good stories about that. We are talking to Sarah Root and Craig LaChance. This is Lawyers in the House with Montlake on WSB. Welcome back to The House, Lawyers in the House with Montlake on WSB. I'm Veronica Waters, here with Montlake injury attorneys Craig LaChance and Sarah Root. And we are talking about what to do if you've been in an accident, what not to do if you've been in an accident, and maybe we can delve a little bit into what to do if you've witnessed an accident. But let's get back to the first person stuff, because I really want to know how to be prepared if I've been the one in an accident. What do I say? What do I do? What should be my first call? What do I say to the police?
Sure. Well, obviously when the police arrive, you just want to give them an accounting of what happened. And again, it's going to vary based upon the context. If it's a rear-end collision and you were at a complete stop at a red light and someone hit you from behind, it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of necessary investigation that the police are going to do. However, in lane change situations where there's a dispute as to who came over into which lane, or at an intersection maybe where there's a vehicle that's turning left in front of the other vehicle, you want to be clear with the officer about what color the lights were as you were approaching the intersection, as you entered the intersection. You want to explain to the officer the speed that you were traveling so he can get a better context of how the accident may have occurred. And then, of course, if there was conversations with the at-fault driver prior to the police arriving, that information should be conveyed to the police. You should tell the police what the other driver told you before they arrived in the event that they start to change their story after the fact.
How important is the language that I'm using with the police and with the insurance companies, Sarah?
I think I'd say the language is more important when you're talking with the insurance company. So moving on after the scene of the accident, when you're dealing with the insurance company, often they will request to do a recorded statement with you.
Okay.
This is where I would absolutely encourage people to call us first so that we can talk through some of these issues that they may anticipate. It's a free consultation. So even if nothing else comes from it, at least you're going into this with more information. And so they can call us. 1-800-LAW-NEED is the number to the firm, and they will speak with an attorney about this, because the recorded statement is really where the insurance company is doing a detailed recording and often going into more detailed questions about how the accident occurred. And so in a fact pattern, for example, if the other driver had made a left-hand turn in front of you, sometimes people will say things in everyday conversation like, they came out of nowhere, or I had no time to react. When the reality is they didn't come from nowhere. You saw them sort of making the turn. It was sudden. It surprised you. And typically your automatic reaction is to slam on the brake, maybe swerve. But if you make those types of statements that I had no time to react and I didn't do anything, that could actually be used against you to suggest that you didn't take any evasive action when in reality you did. So it's just a question about the phrases you're selecting and being aware.
All right. So helpful. I'm taking notes as you talk, and I hope that you are too, friends, because this is the stuff that you need to let you know how the law can help you in some of those scary situations that you find yourself in. Coming up, we're going to have the Motley closing argument that we promise you each and every week. We're also going to talk a little bit about the emotions, if it's okay, that I might have when it comes to maybe bringing a case against somebody. I don't want to feel too bad. Am I going to be messing up somebody's life? We're going to delve into that. That's next up on Lawyers in the House with Montlick on WSB. Hey, welcome back to the house. Lawyers in the House with Montlick on WSB. I'm your host, Veronica Waters, here with Sarah Root and Craig LaChance, talking to you about the do's and don'ts after you've been in or maybe even witnessed an accident out there. We are no stranger to accidents in Metro Atlanta, so this is where you're going to get all of the stuff you need to know, the primer that you want for the information that you need that's going to keep you and your family safe. So we keep talking about the aspect of personal injury law, which has to do with claims and courts and judgments and awards. Sarah, you come from a family full of doctors, right? You've always wanted to help people. I have always wanted to help people, and I feel like there might be some hesitation on my part, as well as the parts of a lot of people who don't want to be seen as lawsuit happy.
Yeah.
Or putting somebody else through a hard time for something that they clearly didn't intend to do, even if they were careless and did it.
Yeah, that is a common theme that I hear from people who have reached out to us. I think they're hesitant to do so. But really, this is why we have insurance, and we're paying for insurance for these exact types of scenarios. And I think so many people are not prepared. God forbid you're injured in an accident and you're not able to work for a period of time. A lot of people are not prepared for the financial burden that will come with that. Same with even just the vehicle. If the vehicle is totaled, you receive the fair market value for that. Often that's not enough to get yourself into a replacement vehicle, but that's what the law allows. So already you're coming out of pocket a substantial amount of money just to get another vehicle. In Atlanta, you really need a vehicle for most parts of the city to get around. So I think when people call us, we talk that through, we talk about the insurance. A lot of people are surprised, when we get to the point of going forward to a trial, for example, if a case gets to that. Many of them do not. But we're not allowed to talk about insurance. But in fact, the insurance company's lawyers are the ones that are sitting there and defending the at-fault driver. And ultimately, that judgment is being paid from their insurance.
So I'm not digging into somebody's bank account, is what you're
highly
saying.
Unlikely. I mean, every case would be different. We talk about it, but I would say the vast majority, we're talking about insurance coverage paying.
Right. And even in the scenario, let's say the at-fault driver turns out to not be insured. Now, under our laws in Georgia, you would still sue that person in their name. They would be the defendant. But assuming you have uninsured motorist coverage through your own carrier, it is actually your own insurance that would be paying any judgment. So even if a person is not insured, the likelihood of the individual who's not insured having to come out of pocket to pay a judgment is again, as Sarah said, is not an impossibility, but generally speaking, as lawyers, we're going after insurance money, not individuals.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I think another thing people don't realize is if they are sued, if they're the ones that are at fault for the accident and they're sued, part of what you're paying for your insurance coverage is you'll get a defense attorney from the insurance carrier to defend your case.
Right, and that's free of charge. That's included in your policy. If you are ever the at-fault party for an accident and are sued and are served with a copy of a lawsuit, all you have to do is contact your insurance company, hand over the paperwork, and they're obligated to provide a defense free of charge to you.
Okay, that's what the insurance is for.
Correct.
That's why I'm making these pricey premium payments in the first place.
Absolutely. And that's something we want to go through with people because often we discover additional layers of insurance that people don't know that they have. And especially in a more severe situation, which, a lot of cases you may not know how severely you're injured in the initial time frame. And that's why it's so important to talk to a lawyer because we see it all the time where, somebody might have, let's say, shoulder pain. I'm thinking of a case that I had. My client was actually a police officer, so he was former military. One of these guys, he's just going to tough through the pain. He's not.
They want to tough it out, right? Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I'm asking him, and I kept telling him, you just have to make sure you have this addressed. So, sure enough, turns out he had a major rotator cuff tear and thought he was going to push through it, but ultimately did have to undergo a major surgery. And if he had settled the case in the beginning, the insurance company had offered him a small settlement. That would have been the end of it. You can never go back and reopen it after you've made that decision. And often it's just too early to know the full extent of your injuries. So
do I need to call you from the scene of the accident?
Not necessarily. Again, this is real world advice. I always counsel my clients. And again, a lot of our counseling is moving forward if this happens to you again. But my advice always is focus on the police, getting an accurate police report created for the accident. Then from there, if you're in severe pain, go to the emergency room and get checked out. And then once you're discharged from the emergency room, give us a call.
Do I need to be in severe pain to get checked out?
Absolutely not. No, it's very, very wise to get checked out immediately following an accident. One of the insurance companies have many tactics that they use to defend personal injury claims, but one of their favorite plays is to argue what we call a delay in care, that you waited too long between the date of the accident and when you first seek out medical care. And as a result, they argue there's no causal connection between the accident and the medical care that you ultimately receive. Now, there's no magic number. It's not like you have to get medical care within 24 hours or 48 hours. Mm-hmm. But the sooner you do, the better off you are, the better and stronger claim you'll have.
A week, 2 weeks. Well, what's too long?
I would say that's too long. Yeah. I mean, the reality is, too, often people try to tough it out. And then by the time they realize, this is not getting better, I need to make an appointment, they call the doctor's office. They can't get in for another 2 weeks. So, all of a sudden you're at a point where 3 weeks or a month has gone by. It makes it much more difficult at that point to prove that the accident was the cause of this injury.
Is this something, go on, you were going to say something.
No, it's just going to dovetail into what Sarah was saying. Especially if you're trying to get in and see an orthopedic, a specialist doctor, mm-hmm. they're oftentimes booking, 2-3 weeks out. So it can be challenging. So oftentimes your best avenue to establish the injury is to go to the emergency room because they can see you that day.
Well, and really, for more severe injuries, some people don't realize they may have a hairline fracture in their vertebrae. And that's something where it just needs to be diagnosed and stabilized. I mean, so they can determine the severity of it. Often then there's not going to be much that can be done other than you're going to be placed in an immobilizing brace and then you will have the follow-up appointment. But if it's a more severe fracture where they're concerned about damage to the spinal cord or something like that, then you're going to get the care you need much more rapidly.
So is it something that do I need to go to the ER? Can I go to urgent care? Does it matter where I go?
I would say yes. I mean, ideally, although I know we all hate to wait at the ER, that's going to be where you can get the most care if you need it. They can do the CT of the brain. If they do see a bleed or anything, they're on it instead of the urgent care having to refer you or send you in. So it may save you a double trip.
Right. And then as Sarah pointed out, urgent care is typically going to max out at maybe an X-ray, whereas if you go to the emergency room, they're going to have a much wider suite of diagnostic testing available to diagnose your injuries. So my recommendation typically is the emergency room over urgent care.
Have you had a case where somebody gave you a ring and you were like, why did you wait so long to call me?
Happens all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. What happens? Can you give me an example? What do you do when that happens?
Well, it depends. As Sarah pointed out, 2 weeks is around the time where it's going to become extremely problematic. So what I typically do is discuss with the client the severity of the collision. If this is a serious accident resulting in extensive property damage, as a general rule, you're going to have a little more leeway with the amount of time that you have to seek medical care. So it's going to have to be done on a case-by-case basis. So, our advice would be to call us at 1-800-LAW-NEED as soon as possible. And again, it doesn't have to, when I say as soon as possible, that first, 8, 12 hours, focus on getting an accurate police report. If you're hurt badly, go to the emergency room, but call us the next day. Get some sleep, take the medicine that they gave you at the emergency room. Hopefully you'll feel a little bit better, but then call us the next day.
Have you ever had anybody call you from out there on the scene?
Absolutely. All the time.
I see your billboard right here. So it's like, I'm going to give you a call.
Yeah, and what I'll tell them, when the officer arrives, I said, you need to hang up with me and focus your attention on the officer and give me a call back once you've completed your interaction with the police officer, because that's always going to be paramount over speaking with me. We're available all the time. You can give us a call. It's important to focus on getting an accurate police report at the accident scene first.
Is it hopeless if I waited a week or two?
No, absolutely not. And as Craig was saying, kind of the rule of thumb is if it's a really bad wreck, you see the pictures and you think someone was absolutely injured in that, then maybe it buys us a little bit more time. And I've absolutely had cases where, under certain circumstances, a client may come and they had the initial ER visit, and they reported the really severe neck pain, but then time went by, they just assume it's going to get better. They ended up needing neck surgery. So every case is different, and we just need to know the details.
Is this something that I could ever handle without a lawyer?
Sometimes, yeah. And so we have people, we always want to give good advice. So we'll talk about the facts, and that does happen commonly. If we think it's a case that it doesn't make sense for us to handle, we're going to let you know about that and give you some tips on how you can resolve it on your own. If it's a really minor situation with no injuries, it may not make sense for us to take the case, and we'll talk about it.
Okay. And that's what you do when I call.
Yeah. Well, what you got to be careful with is that if you talk to the insurance company before you talk to a lawyer, and you indicate that you've suffered some sort of injury, you don't necessarily even have to have received medical care at that point. They will oftentimes try to incentivize you to basically sign a release and settle your case. They may offer you $500 or $1,000 and say, well, we'll give you $500 for your pain and suffering if you sign a release. And if you agree to do that, and then 2 or 3 days later, you're in substantially more pain, it's too late. So that's why, if there's one takeaway from this conversation today, I think it's always talk to us first before you talk to the insurance company. Get the medical care you need immediately, talk to the police immediately, but give us a call at 1-800-LAW-NEED before you talk to the insurance company, whether that be your insurance company or the at-fault driver's insurance company. Because as Sarah pointed out, we may not decide to represent you, or you may not decide to work with us, but we can at least offer you some practical advice, tips, and pointers to have a better experience.
In a recent episode, we talked to one of your colleagues, and he was talking about the fact that he had a client who actually was pressured into agreeing to $1,000 settlement on the way to get medical treatment. Mm-hmm. They're like, we'll give you $1,000 for your bills. And
yeah, that's a red flag, when somebody's encouraging you to very quickly sign a release, settle the case. As we said before, you just don't know the full extent of your injury. So there's really no need to rush into that. You'd always be better off talking to us first and just waiting. If it turns out you don't have severe injuries, great, then move forward with it. But just allow yourself the time so that you can determine that. Right after the accident, people have adrenaline rushing, and often the inflammation kind of gets worse over the next few days. Sometimes everybody, their whole body hurts. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what's going on with the injuries, and time will allow that to become more clear.
Yeah, right. You don't always know what you're feeling in that moment.
That's right. And what people need to realize is that $1,000 these days, with regard to a medical care, especially emergency medical care, that doesn't even buy an emergency room visit. That's not enough money to even get properly checked out.
Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
Can the insurance companies afford to pay me what that accident damage is worth?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yes.
This is what we're all paying for with coverage. They absolutely should be paying what that case is worth. We'll talk about it. Unfortunately, we do have severe injuries, catastrophic injuries and death where there's inadequate insurance coverage. And so that's something we have to look at. Again, we're trying to identify all of the potential layers. We may determine that there's an umbrella policy that someone's not aware of. And in just talking with the insurance company, quite frequently when I talk to new clients or potential clients, they are not aware of what the insurance limits are. So they really can't make an informed decision because they don't know how much they're dealing with.
Sarah Root and Craig LaChance. This is Lawyers in the House with Montlick on WSB. You are in the house, Lawyers in the House with Montlick. I'm talking to Sarah Root and Craig LaChance. I'm Veronica Waters, your amazing, lovable host, talking to you about what to do and what not to do after getting into an accident. And without further ado, it's what you've been waiting for all week long, the Montlick closing argument.
This is one we hear all the time. It wasn't my fault, so why should I have my insurance company involved? I don't want my insurance to have to pay for anything. That is so common. But what people don't realize, after an accident, it may take weeks for the insurance companies to do their investigation, or they may have certain policies where, let's say, they have to talk to their driver before they can go ahead and resolve something or make many attempts to do that. This is why we pay for insurance coverage. So we can go through your policy and advise you on what type of coverage you have. It may just be a situation where you're going through your insurance company temporarily. It's a timing issue so that they can go ahead, start the repairs on your vehicle or get you into a rental. Ultimately, they're going to turn around and be reimbursed by the at-fault driver's carrier. So it's really just a timing issue so you're not stranded. And this is what you've been paying for that coverage. And ultimately, if you're not at fault, your rates will not go up. So that's a common misperception.
Right. And in addition to that, there may be some other coverages available through your personal insurance that would be a benefit to you. It's an optional coverage in Georgia, but we have what's called medical payments coverage. And most people don't realize that that benefit is available to you whether or not you're at fault for the accident or are not at fault for the accident. It's just the trigger is that you incurred medical bills as a result of an accident. And that coverage is available to you, again, even if you're not at fault. In addition to that, uninsured motorist coverage or underinsured motorist coverage, they're really one and the same, but that protects you in the event the at-fault driver turns out to not be insured or doesn't have enough insurance. You've incurred medical bills that exceed the insurance that the at-fault driver has purchased. And finally, another consideration that most people don't realize is that your policy requires you to report all accidents regardless of fault. And the laws, it varies a little from insurance company to insurance company, but there can be timely reporting requirements as short as 60 days, that if you don't report a claim within 60 days of the accident, they could later deny that claim for a failure to report the claim in a timely manner. So it's very important to report the claim.
Yeah, and one more layer to that is with family members living in the same household, we often see younger drivers who may not be covered or they don't have the right type of coverage, but a family member lives in their household, like grandma has moved in a month ago. Well, even though grandma wasn't involved in the accident, her vehicle wasn't involved in the accident, her policy will automatically cover her family member, and people don't realize that. So that's why they should give us a call.
Know the benefits. Get the benefits you paid for. And what's the number to call if we've got a question?
1-800-LAW-NEED.
Thank you so much to Craig LaChance and Sarah Root, the powerful attorneys from a powerful firm, Lawyers in the House on WSB. I am Veronica Waters. Thank you so much for joining us. We are always going to be here for you. Make sure you find us on social at Montlick Law, on YouTube, and send us your questions, lawyersinthehouse@montlick.com. Thanks so much. See you next time.